right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Google Plus Hangout, the second one hosted here at Massive Entertainment. My name is Andre Tiwari, and I'm an associate producer, and I will be your moderator for today. On behalf of Ubisoft, I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to join us. Today's Hangout is going to focus on the Ubisoft graduate program once again, but we're going to talk a lot more about programming today. Joining me on the panel are Anders Holmqvist. He is the technical director for Tom Clancy's The Division. And also Tobias Karlsson, he's lead gameplay programmer for The Division. And joining us once again is Osa Afshari, and she is our head of human resources. Anders, would you like to say a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Anders. I'm the technical director for The Division, which means I manage all the programmers and technical artists, as well as set the vision and direction for what we want to do with technology, programming, graphics in The Division. And it's a very challenging job where I do a lot of different things. It's very fun. And I've been at Massive for 7 years now or so.
Tobias?
Yeah, I'm Tobias. I've been here since 2000, so it's a long, long time now. Gameplay programmer, which at Massive always meant like doing network games, and that's sometimes very interesting and difficult, but currently in charge of the gameplay team on Tom Clancy's The Division, and there's a lot of meetings, a lot of planning going on, and a lot of very interesting technical things to find solutions to, including a lot of network communication.
Excellent. Osa?
Yeah, I'm sort of the support function in this group, taking care of the inflow of people that want to join Massive, the period where they spend time at Massive, and also when, for some reason, they decide leaving. And this is done together with a team of my HR colleagues.
Excellent. So we're joining you again today from southern Sweden. Massive is located in Malmö. It's the third largest city in Sweden, and it is directly across from Copenhagen, Denmark. Massive was founded back in 1994 and has produced games such as Ground Control, World in Conflict, parts of Assassin's Creed Revelations and Far Cry 3, and is now the lead studio on Tom Clancy's The Division. Our parent company, Ubisoft, employs roughly 9,000 people globally. We have studios in many, many different countries, and it is the third largest independent publisher in the world. The suite of games include Rayman, Just Dance, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Driver. I'm sure there are more, but they're not really coming to mind at the moment. So joining us today are a couple of our fans, and I'm going to apologize in advance for the way I pronounce these names. The first one is Moses Shenge, who's joining us from Lund University. The second one is Rohan Huljalkar. I hope I got that one right. From Stockholm University. And the third one is Michelle Emekora from Copenhagen University. They're not going to be live in the stream at the bottom of the screen, but they will be asking us questions live. One of the things that was asked last time is how can you get your questions in, and I'd like to cover that right off the bat. You can post to the Google Hangout page, or if you are in the Hangout and you have chat on the side, you can post there. We also have personnel at HQ that are monitoring all of the Ubisoft channels, so any place where you can put up a post in social media, we'll see it, try and filter it, and get it on air for you. So, with that said, I think we're really ready to get started with the questions. I don't really see any coming in yet, so I'm just going to ask Anders, can you describe a bit of a day as technical director on The Division for us?
Oh, wow. It varies a lot. I do a lot of different things. I might start off the day being in on one of the task force meetings. So, for example, the gameplay task force morning meeting, where we discuss what problems we have, what people are doing during the day, if there's anything particular we need to look at, what cool things have gotten into the game since last time we spoke. And it's often a very good way to get the fastest news on all the new cool stuff that gets in. After that, I have to admit I have a lot of meetings, but I also try to get some programming in every now and again to sit down, look at what's going on in the game, what could we do better, and I also like to play test a lot. I think it's very important that you play your game as much as possible, and you play your game as much as possible with other people, because that's the only way you're going to find all the real issues. So I try to do that, if not every day, then almost every day. And then after that, it's a lot of problem solving, going around talking to different people, trying to figure out what are the biggest issues we have right now, how do we solve them, who else do we need to talk to, and it's a lot of variation, a lot of different areas that I need to look at. It's very, very challenging, very, very fun.
Okay, I'm going to ask you the exact same question.
Well, it's in many ways it's similar to Anders' answer. It varies a bit. There's of course meetings to synchronize with other disciplines, art and design, and other disciplines within code as well, or what you have, more technical sides, since we're being the gameplay team now. And then of course there's sometimes time even for me to do some programming. But most of the time is spent making sure that the guys on the team are working on the right things that's needed for the game. I mean, a big part of the job is making sure we have a fun game, and we also need to play it all the time, as Anders said. It's
Okay, we've got our first question in here. This one is coming from Rohan, and he's asking, what would be the selection criteria for this particular graduate program? Åsa, I think I'm going to bounce that one to you, actually.
Sure. One of the criteria is that you are a graduate, meaning that you have less than 1 year of work experience, that you are a passionate gamer, having a gaming interest, of course, as we're part of the gaming industry, producing great games. So I would say that that last part is really, really important for us. But also that you are having a Swedish nationality, meaning a Swedish citizenship is one of the sort of technical criteria that we need to look at. And of course, that you have a background, meaning an education that is sort of making you to one of those top talents that we're looking for. Sure.
Very cool. Let's see here. I'm going to give this question to Johan. Jeez Louise. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys this inside joke. I called Anders Johan in an email, so that's why we're all laughing about this.
I'm now named Johan. I changed my name.
It's the power of a moderator. This question comes from Michelle. I'm going to give it to both Anders and Matthias. What did I do now? It is Matthias. Oh my God, it's Tobias. I am really good at names. It is one of my specialities. Okay, the question is from Michelle. I got that name right. What will you expect from the candidates for programming in particular?
I think we will set the same kind of standards we set for everybody we hire, and especially for the programmers. We have very high standards, and we're looking at a very broad set of capabilities. We want people that are social and that can function well in a group and function well with very uncertain premises. I mean, you need creative people who can be given a very large task and then be creative with that, try to push it themselves and get it to somewhere where it's fun and it's working well. We're also, of course, as also said, interested in people that likes games. If you don't like games, I think there are other industries where that might be better suited for you. But basically everybody we interview loves games, and we do as well. So it makes for a very nice work environment. You always have things to talk about and things like that. And then the last thing we look for is technical competence. We want people who have a deep understanding of everything from low-level programming, how does a computer work, to an understanding of what's going on, especially with online programming, what's going on in the online world, what is Google doing, what is Facebook doing, how do you handle all these new technologies, how do you handle the amount of players, the amount of data that you need to get through your servers, and I think those three criteria together, like how social you are, how much you like games, and how you view games, and your technical competence, those are the three big areas that we're looking at.
Yeah, and if I may add, Anders, and that is also for you to function fairly quickly. The expectation is, so to say, to make you up and running and being able to contribute in terms of adding code, initiatives, examples, etc., etc. So our expectations would be for you to be treated as any kind of employee that we hire, just like you were saying.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we want people up and running as quickly as possible,
yeah.
And basically everybody who works with the code is the same, and we don't really give any special tasks or anything like that. We try to get people up and running as quick as possible and give them interesting things to work at or work on from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to what Anders said as for criteria. Just expanding on, like, especially for a gameplay programmer, it's very important to be able to talk to all the different disciplines. You not only social with your peers, as it were, but also be able to understand and talk to artists, designers, and all other disciplines, besides all the technical qualifications.
Yeah, and maybe keeping in mind that they might not be at the same technical programming levels, as say, and that's part of the communication skills that I guess you're
yeah, that's exactly what
phrasing.
I'm getting at. It's you need to be able to speak different languages.
Yes,
so
exactly.
So basically, it's knowledge, passion, people skills.
Yeah,
and people skills. Yeah,
very nice summary.
Thank you. We got a cool question from the live stream here, so I'm going to grab this one. When you guys are deciding to create new technologies for your games, like the new destruction engine in The Division, how do you guys plan what you need to do? Wow, how did you plan the destruction system on this?
That was a dangerous question. It depends a lot on where in the project we're at. I'm sorry. If you're in full production, then it's requires some more detailed planning to make sure we can do it in time for release and things like that. Earlier in the project, which was when we started with the destruction in this case, which was in pre-production, then we can set more lofty goals. Basically, we said we want destruction. We want it to be the best destruction ever seen in an MMO, and that was our starting goal. I'm sorry. And we had one programmer and one technical artist that got that as a task, and they sat down and they started experimenting and talking with themselves how and what they should be doing. And when they had something that they thought was a good first stage, a good prototype that they could show, they showed that and everybody loved it. And then we decided to go with that for the full game. So especially early in the game's life cycle, it's very open. It's a lot of what people, how much people feel they can push things, and how much people feel they can do the best kinds of game systems that's possible. Basically, the closer you get to release, the more we need to have a more tight planning. But I still would say we're very open with getting new ideas and new prototypes in.
So I'm going to hijack that question a little bit for you. Can you talk us through a bit of, from a gameplay perspective, if we're going to put in a new feature, how do you go from prototype to iteration to something that is actually functional? What is that process like?
Well, I mean, most game features tend to come from design, obviously. So we'll have a sit down with design and a gameplay coder. They'll talk it through, explain the design, look at the documentation, and try to come up with sort of both agree on an understanding, agree on a long-term plan, and agree on a first iteration to get started. Figure out what needs there are for content, and try to synchronize that with the other teams to make sure that they have the tools needed to start implementing a first version that can then be signed off by the designers again.
And usually, once we have a first prototype up and running, then the programmer and the designer will sit down, try it out together, see what they need to tweak and things like that, and based on that, they move forward as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of iteration going on with a close collaboration between design and gameplay code.
Okay. The next question is coming from Moses, and he's asking, what does an average day look like for a graduate at Massive? I'm kind of going to tweak that question a bit, because essentially a graduate program member here at Massive is going to be treated exactly like a brand new junior. So
Yeah.
can you guys all three talk about that from the various perspectives of what we would expect from a junior, or what their day might look like?
I think it would be like any other programmer's day. The only difference would be that whenever we have somebody that's new on the team or the project or company, we usually give them a mentor, for at least a dedicated mentor for the first half year or so. And it doesn't matter how experienced you are, or how inexperienced you are, you're going to get a mentor anyway, because it's a very good way to get people up and running quickly, and it means you always have somebody to ask a question. So usually you sit in the same office as your mentor, and an average day would be you would come into the office, get set up, get some breakfast, maybe look at your mail, and then have a stand-up meeting with your group, with your task force group. So say if you're working with the online team, you'll have a stand-up with online programmers and online managers and whoever is in that task force. You're going to discuss the tasks you have for the day, if you have any problems or blockers, and after that you're going to go back and you most likely have a task that you're working on. It could be, for example, the business intelligence system we have, where we do tracking of every playtest, and then we take that data into the level editor so we can see and track every player who has gone through the playtest and what they've done. And that's something the online team is working on. And then maybe you would be adding features to that. So you would sit programming up until lunch, go to lunch with some colleagues, come back, and then maybe have a meeting or so. There's something that needs to be discussed. Maybe meet up often with the level designers, because they have needs they need to see, they have data they need to get from the playtests. So then you sit a bit with them, tweak some things, iterate, look at, okay, should we be doing it this way, or do you need this data more? And when you've gotten the information you need, you can continue programming. And I would say that's a very average normal day for a programmer. Then some days there's more meetings, some days there happens very strange things. Some day we have CIA consultants and things on spot or in Massive, but that's an average day at least.
Yeah, I don't know how to really add to that in a meaningful way. I mean, yes, that's most likely what's going to happen, and online programmers and gameplay programmers obviously have a lot to talk about as well. So there'll be some of us there as well, asking for features, maybe setting up overnight tests for performance and other reasons, and discussing protocols, since we share a lot of responsibility for the network layers with the online code. So
I think something we encourage is to talk to each other and to ask questions, and especially when you have a mentor, it's very easy to just turn around and ask whatever you want. We've found that it's a very good way to get people to not be afraid to ask questions and to get started fast and easy.
Yeah, it's like you're not alone, and you're not expected to be the single problem solver. There are always people around you, and especially as a graduate, I would say there are less expectations on you in terms of this being the single point of contact in terms of the problem-solving aspect.
Also, I'm going to take this one really quick because it's probably important to get this message out. What are the exact starting dates of the graduate program?
It's September, early September. So we are just like a couple of months away from having you on board.
Okay, and to follow up that, the people can apply where?
Yeah, they can apply through Massive webpage or the graduate program webpage, of course. So you're more than welcome to Google search, and you'll find out about the program. Otherwise, it's massive.se, and search on the career page. There you'll find more info. And the application period ends on March 15th. So it's not this Friday, but the next one.
Okay.
So it's coming
so you
closer.
got some time left then.
Yes.
We've got a question from, let me see, where did this come from? I think it's from the live stream. Yes, it is. Why do you put a focus on online programming for the graduate program? I mean, we have the Xbox One and the PS4 coming out now, and it seems like more and more people are connected. So
that's it. for one, it's one of the big challenges going forward. Basically, all games have an online component, or in many cases are just online, like The Division or Titanfall and so on. Which means that we really need people that are strong in online, that have a good understanding of online programming. But it's also that it's quite hard to find good online programmers. So it's something that we want to expand. It's something that we want to be able to help people get into and to guide people into, because we think it's a very rich and fun career that not many people find or end up in. So we kind of want to help people get into that career, and it's a very interesting area to work in, and I think that's also a reason why we chose it, because it's something where we feel we can provide an interesting environment and provide interesting challenges.
Tobias, I'm going to take the follow-up and give it to you, and that is, do you work to develop your employees to grow as developers in terms as innovators, such as allowing staff to switch positions within the company and try on several tasks? Wow, such as Scrum. Well, maybe this is an OSN Tobias question, but I mean, when you've got a programmer.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's sort of a multi-part question in a way. I mean, yes, we do try to develop employees, and we want, like, innovation is something that we value a lot. There are examples of projects that started out of just one person's spare time innovations, and lots of focus is put on creativity within the company as like the massive culture as well as Ubisoft as a whole. As far as switching positions, that depends on what you mean. Of course, we've had people change what they do. I mean, it's not like you're usually not locked down doing the same thing for years and years. Maybe you work within the same discipline and the same area of expertise, but of course we try to make sure people have something interesting work on that they can that they feel evolves them, if possible. I don't know, Anders can fill in more.
I think we have a lot of people switching what they do within, say, programming, going from like tools programmers to render programmers, or going from gameplay programmers, online programmers, or online programmers to tools programmers. Maybe not as much switching, say, between being a programmer and an artist. Mostly the coder art that the programmers do is not quite at the quality level that artists like it.
You can speak for your own coder art.
My own coder art is very beautiful. I'm a master at paint. But in general, we are quite flexible in what people do, and people do jump around a lot. I think that's one of the ways to keep the job interesting as well.
Yeah.
And I would say for innovators, as Tobias said, like both Massive and Ubisoft has a very good culture in both allowing people to innovate, but also both picking it up to become, shall we say, real projects, and also sharing it with other studios. I think especially sharing innovation within Ubisoft is one of the reasons I really love Ubisoft, because I haven't really felt or seen that at any other company I worked at.
Yeah, and speaking of development, I mean, you both are good examples of how people could develop. Along with your experience, we've been listening to your interest in adding a lead position or a director position or an associate position. So there are many different ways of developing within Ubisoft, and of course Massive.
And besides, I mean, there's, like Anders said, there's both technology sharing is a very big thing with Ubisoft. There's also internal training programs and internal information sharing summits and things, and of course the graduate programs now. So I mean, there's a lot of focus on innovation and creativity and making sure people can learn new things.
Our next question is going to come from Michelle, and she's asking, is it possible to get more details on the difference between a role of a front-end and back-end programmer?
I would say the main difference is your focus, especially if you're very hardcore back-end programmer. You're going to be working a lot with servers, databases, big data. You're going to look at, as I said before, look at what Google is doing, look at what Facebook is doing, and try to to build these very huge, complex, but very interesting systems that runs the game behind the scenes.
Like including hardware and security and those
Yes.
kinds of problems, I guess.
Yeah, and I think especially nowadays, security is a very big thing, and also availability. I mean, we've seen many games where the game is not playable on day one, and that's really not acceptable. So it's a complex job with a lot of aspects, and I mean, you get to do everything from talking to Russian white hat hackers that you help you secure your systems, to look at how do we best make the best user experience for people when they sign up or when they're going to get into the game. So it covers a lot of different things. The front-end programmers, if you have more of a focus on that, then you're going to do things that are a little bit more visible to the average player. If the back-end programmer does his job right, nobody's ever going to notice it because everything just works. Whereas the front-end programmer, then it's going to be a bit more about how you do matchmaking, how you do voice over IP, how do you group up in the game, how does it work when you go into different instances, how does it work when you go into PvP, all of these kinds of things. It's perhaps a little bit closer to pure gameplay programming, whereas the backend programmers are really the heavy technical backend of the online programming team.
I'm going to follow on that question. Since we're building stuff nowadays that's going to be live for potentially years and years and years, how does that affect the way that you set up and execute your code? Because it's not the same as it used to be, where you write a piece of code and it runs and you know it's standalone. This is going to be updated and evolve. So how does that affect what you do?
It changes a lot of how we think, because you just can't really put big piles of code and hope it works. You have to think about what happens if this piece breaks down. Will the rest of the system still stay up? How easy is it to manage? When somebody comes in 10 years' time, will they still be able to log into the game without any problems? Will the people maintaining servers still be able to maintain and work with the systems that we put up? So you have to have a very long-term focus, and you also have to have a very deep security focus, because if you're not thinking about security, somebody's going to break it for you, and you really don't want that. So it's a bit of a more long-term challenge perhaps than classical game development, and I think that's something that's quite satisfying, because you get to see the things you do running for a very long time and be used by several thousands or millions of players over the years. It's really nice, fun area, I would say.
So our next question comes from the live stream, and Hugo asks, which programming language is used most in game development?
C++ is still the biggest one, I'd say. I don't know if it's starting to change at all. I would guess no.
I think it depends a bit on which games you're making as well. I mean, for the games of our size, it's definitely C++. If you're making smaller apps and things like that, I would say there are other languages that perhaps not nearly as big, but at least they're starting to show up, like C# and Objective-C and languages like that. A lot of languages supported by Unity and things like that as well. But C++ is definitely still the majority or the major language of choice for most game program projects.
Okay, I'm going to ask you guys a quick question of my own, far less technical, but I think a bit entertaining. What's the toughest bug you guys have ever found, or the weirdest, and how did you find it, and how did you fix it?
Do you want to start on that one?
I don't know if I don't know, something that I can explain in a short time. I'm not even sure. The most annoying ones, I can say at least, in general, are the ones that stare you right in the face, like the right there hiding in plain sight, because you're staring at the complicated bits of code and you're certain that there's something wrong with the complicated looking code, but in the end it turns out to be some bad loop condition or a bad statement or something, or I don't know, misuse of a data structure, and that's like something you should have seen the first time. And you bring in someone else and they also miss it because the complicated code draws your attention. I don't know.
we had one quite interesting bug that involved a lot of the programmers not that long ago, which was that the random part of the memory was getting a 1 added to it, and it showed up as everything from NPCs doing 1 damage more than they should be doing to things just crashing because memory pointers were changed. And that one was quite interesting to track down, to find all the places that were being changed and trying to lock down where it was being written from, because it was happening completely at random. It was mostly happening when we were having playtests with more than 150 players, and that's not trivial to set up those playtests. It requires quite a lot of people, even if we have like test bots and things we can use to do that, which the online team has written. But in the end, we managed to track down to narrow down more and more, like from where this could be written, and in the end, we found it was basically a dangling pointer, as it's called, that should have been removed, that wasn't, and it was being written to, and then it was writing a 1 or adding a 1 to random places in memory. It was very fun. It took a while to find, but it's very satisfying when you find it.
So our next question comes from Moses. Pardon me. He says, after the graduate program, what kind of opportunities do the graduates have within the company or the studio? And I'll ask that to all three. Åsa?
I would say the plan is long term, of course. When we hire people, regardless if it's the graduate program or the program as such, the plan is for you to stay with us for as long as you want. That means that we will invest in you in terms of training, in terms of getting you up to speed, provide you with different opportunities to develop your career, either if it's like we spoke earlier about having or going towards a more specialized role, or being more a generalist, or maybe having some kind of lead position, meaning taking care of supporting your team members. So that's the I would say there is a clear ambition from Massive and a commitment to have you up and running and for a long time.
Basically, we never, even when talking about interns or short term, we never take in anybody just for a project or just for short term goals. We always want people to like it here and to be somebody that we can really bet on. We have a very stable team, or the entire Massive is very stable. People like it here and people stay here, and we don't want to get people on just for a project and then leave. We want people to like it here and have a very long-term view on what they're doing, so that they feel responsible and they feel they have ownership over the things they do. I think that's very important for the culture we have.
It ties back into what you said earlier regarding the question, what would graduates work with, because we want people to work on things that actually matter to the projects, so that they feel they are in production as soon as possible. And if they are in production, why would we want them to leave? Of course, we want them to stay on.
I'm going to go back to a question we had during the last Hangout, and that question was, the graduate program is a 2-year program, and there's a kind of an understanding that you would move to another studio after the first year. Åsa, can you talk about that? And then I would like to ask you two what your thoughts are on the benefits of having somebody work as a programmer in 2 different studios. What could they gain from that experience?
Sure. It's just like you say, Andre. It's the program setup is that you will spend the first year at Massive, becoming as much as possible up and running, and then the second year, the plan is for you to spend at another Ubisoft studio, which I think is really, really beneficial for you in terms of getting to see maybe another work culture, a different project, meet with different people, have the chance to network and create your own contacts. Are I would say only benefits from our point of view.
I think a lot of what project you're on will decide a lot on how the teams work and what technology they use and how everybody works together. And I think it's, as I said, it's really important to see different ways of doing things, because it gives you new ideas, it gives you inspiration to do things in new ways. And if you're only seeing how to do something one way, then you might be locked into that. And I think that's dangerous. So I think it's very, very useful just to get an idea of how does other people do things.
Yeah, and I would say it's part of Ubisoft strategy as well, to have people moving between the different studios. We could borrow people from other studios coming in with an expertise that we are maybe lacking, or we need to add because we have too few people working on that special area, for example. So this is really supporting the way of working within the group, and it helps you develop your own skills and your own experience a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's both healthy for evolving your knowledge and potentially your career as well. Moving around between projects, and later the thing you mentioned, having people for shorter time spans, maybe borrowed to different studios or on a time restricted mission, can also be a way to sort of break up the very long cycles that tend to be in AAA game production. So that can also be very nice.
Yeah.
So our next question comes from the live stream, and wow, this is a big question. When designing a new game engine, what do you guys think about first? What's the main goal when brainstorming ideas?
Well, yeah, that is a big question. I think the first thing we try to do is to say, what is the purpose of this engine? What makes it different from other engines? What are we trying to do different? And from the beginning to set down a very strong vision and direction for these are the things we want to be good at, and these are the things we want to be best at. Because you can't be best at everything. You have to pick something. If you try to be best at everything, you're most likely going to fail, or you're going to be on a lot of things.
Also, there are some realities to that as well. I mean, content production is a very big cost of AAA productions. So that's usually a very big factor in what you choose to focus on. Like, what is our what do you call it? What is our strategy when it comes to content? How can we do that better than we've done before, or something like that?
Yeah, and then it's also we have some guidelines that we want to follow when we work with programming as well. We want very simple code, because simple code is a lot easier to work with. We try not to do very complex automatic systems, because they're hard to debug, they're hard to work with, they're hard to change, they're hard to remove. And I think from a programming standpoint, one of the things that we kind of have as a core is that code should be easy to remove. The best code is the code you can easily remove, which kind of sounds strange, but it really helps you think about the right things when you write code. But it's designing a new engine is hard, and it's not something you do very often, especially for a AAA engine. So I think we've been very lucky being able to work on Snowdrop, which is our engine, and being able to start that from the beginning. It's been really, really fun, and it's allowed us to do things that I don't think many people get to do.
And if you haven't seen the Snowdrop video,
you
should go on YouTube and Google the Snowdrop engine, or
Snowdrop Showcase from
potential. Just to,
So I'm going to hijack that question as well. From a production standpoint, I mean, the biggest thing I've heard from game teams is tools requests. So that must, I'm assuming that has to factor in your designs as well.
I think that was one of the big things we do differently, is that from the start we've created an engine with a very strong tools focus and with a very strong user experience focus. We want the engine to be fun and consistent and easy to work in. And we feel that if we give people this playground that's very easy to work in and that's very fun to work in, then they're going to create good games and they're going to create good graphics and so on. So I mean, for example, our focus was never on making the best graphics, but we really got good results just by giving people the tools and the power to do these amazing things.
So our next question comes again from the live stream. It says, innovation is a big part of the new generation. What are some examples of how you delivered innovation through your work?
Oh wow, that's also a tricky question. Unfortunately for me, I don't get to innovate that much because I'm mostly here to make sure other people get to innovate. And I think one of the examples is, for example, our UI and our UI systems, where we had our lead UI programmer, Chris, and I told him I want a UI system, I want it to be real-time editable, I want it to be amazing, and I want it to work with, be consistent with how the rest of the engine works. And then he went to town, and he really innovated, and he made this amazing system. And I've heard people say when watching, for example, our E3 trailer and E3 demos, they think the UI was done in Adobe After Effects. I've had people say that I recognize that effect. I've seen it in Adobe After Effects. It's like, no, it's the UI system. And I think giving people the chance and the opportunity to really get a big area of responsibility and go crazy with innovation there and just really push the envelope on what you can do. I think that's a very good way to get people to feel that they are free to innovate, and I think we've been very successful in that.
I mean, for me, coming from the gameplay programming side, innovations would be some maybe in terms of game features, and that's for other people to decide what they find refreshing and innovating. But on a daily basis, it's more about like small, not really innovations maybe, but finding clever ways to do things that help out the other teams we work with, and implementing things based off of design or a content need in a way that helps everybody out in the end. And that's also very important and very rewarding actually when you come up with nice solutions, even if they don't show in the final product as much as maybe the UI system.
The UI system is an extreme example, I would say.
I'm going to follow that question up with one of my own yet again. We're doing the division at least, and Snowdrop is doing stuff with companion gaming that I don't think we've ever seen before. And to me, that's one of the big innovations there. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be? And
we were looking at what's being done with companion gaming, which, if you don't know, it's basically the games you have on like iOS or Android or Windows Mobile that accompanies the main games. And we're looking at what people are doing, and everybody was doing something that was quite separate from the actual game. You weren't really interacting that much with the real game. And we wanted to do something where you felt you were in the same world, you could interact with the same scenarios and with the same people that you would interact with actually playing the game, only you would be doing it on your iPad or your Surface or whatever your gaming tablet of choice was. And that kind of became the foundation of this vision of let's make something that's a real game, but on those tablets. And I think we didn't expect it to be as good as it turned out to be. That was a surprise for us as well, that it worked as well as it did. But it's really, it was, yeah, that was a surprise for us as well, and that sometimes that's how you get innovation as well. It's something you don't expect to be as good as it turns out to be.
So you mentioned earlier side projects, and my understanding is that you guys do a lot of programming on your own. And I'm going to spin this into a graduate program question. Is it more beneficial, or does it make a difference to you guys and to you also if you see candidates come in that have a work portfolio that they have done outside of education or whatever, like participating in game jams or that type of thing?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, one of the things Anders mentioned earlier, passion for games, and what better way to show it than actually having made a lot of games in your spare time even, and not just as part of assignments or something. So of course that's a big factor.
I think in some way you need to show both what you know and what you can do, and also what you're passionate about. And there are many different ways to do it. I mean, you don't have to do it through work samples, but it's a very good way to show here is my passion, here is what I like to do, here is what I believe in, and also here is how I do it. It kind of packages all of that into one thing that we can look at, and of course it makes it easier to see what people like and can do.
Yeah, in the sort of in the interview situation, it also gives us something to talk about, to rely on, have as a sort of a starting point in terms of, like you're saying, Anders, interest, passion, capabilities, skills, etc. So for us, it's a great help if you have some kind of examples that you want to show us.
Yeah, and in terms of like placement, I mean, the more we know about the person, if they've done similar work to game, if they've done any game development on their own, they might already know which areas they are most interested in, and that makes it easier for us to find a good place.
Yeah.
I think it's something that helps, but not a requirement. Definitely not.
Yeah.
So our next question comes from the live stream, and it is, what is the best or most important? Oh, interesting, not important. What is the best or most interesting part of the development process of a AAA game? Golly, there's some big questions coming out.
Yeah, that was.
Do you want to? I think we have different opinions. So
Well, yes and no. I mean, my like immediate answer would be, oh, the prototyping phase. That's so much fun. You can go crazy and test out lots of things. But it does say interesting. It doesn't just use the word fun. It says interesting, and so I probably need to add the craziness that is full production, because it can be tough, but it's nothing if not interesting. I mean, the constantly trying to hit a moving target that is your game, and with all milestones and like things around you, and a very set end date at some point in the future, and you're rushing along, you're changing things, because it's game development. No matter how much you pre-plan, it's always a very dynamic process. Things change, things happen, and back before we were owned by publishers, money changed as well, and that was that was also interesting. So yeah, production for pure fun, I personally would say the early prototyping stages are my favorite.
I'm a bit weird.
Yes.
And I think most programmers would say the prototyping phases, like conception, pre-production. But I actually, for me, the best time of a project is actually just before release. Both because you have the satisfaction of seeing all the work that's been put in, all the time that's been put in, finally coming together to really be like a product and to be a proper game. But also because it shows you all the flaws and all the gaps that you missed or that you didn't think about, all the strange bugs that catches very weird edge cases that nobody thought about, that shows up a week before going gold, when like 300 QC guys have been pounding on the game and found this very weird thing that nobody thought about. And for me, it's really interesting both to see what have we missed, and also to figure out how do we fix it, especially with the time constraints we have at that point.
And maybe what can we learn from it?
Yeah,
to
hopefully we learn something for the next
design.
game as well. Not always the case, but most of the time.
All right, I'm going to ask both of you guys. We have a question from YouTube, and I'm going to kind of modify it slightly. It's going to be an uncomfortable question, but I think it's one that a lot of people want to know the answer to, and it's one that I get asked a lot during studio tours, and that is, well, I'm going to ask, why do games ship with bugs? But the question from YouTube specifically is, how long does it take to fix all bugs and issues in a normal game? I would suggest they're never all fixed.
No, they're never all fixed.
And do programmers often work together as teams, or are they working more as individuals?
Okay, I'll start off with the first one, which where I would once again say it depends a lot on how big your game is and what your aspirations are. Different companies and different projects set very different goals for how many bugs they think is okay to have when they release. And it also depends a lot on time constraints and money and boring things like that the programmers rather not think about. I would say it's hard to say. There are perhaps 2 months, 3 months at the end of the project where you mostly just fix bugs and do some polish, but not like you're not doing new features. But the real answer is a bit more complex because basically we're fixing bugs and issues all the time. Crashes we don't allow at all. They need to be fixed as soon as we see them, and we try to fix basically all serious bugs as we work. The more you let a bug or an issue linger, the more problems you're going to have to fix it. The faster you are from the point where you find a problem and fix it, the easier your life is going to be. So by fixing things during development all the time, your life at the end of the project is going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, but that's also a constant battle because you're prioritizing between features and fixing existing things, and so it depends a lot on like how much freedom you actually have to do that continuously when you have pressure for features and internal deadlines, external deadlines, and all sorts of things. So that's always hard.
It's always a production battle, I would say, but I think it's important to not end up with too much technical debt or too much issues that's been hanging around for a year, because it's going to be very hard to find the root cause. Sometimes the best way to find what the problem is to just step through the check-ins that happened around the time it came in, and if you're going to try to do that a year later, it's not going to work. So fix them as soon as you see them is my best advice.
So the next question comes from one of the panelists, Rohan, and he is asking, what will be the exact expectations from the programmer when he comes on board? In other words, will he be assigned to a project straight away, or will he go through some training? Our training kind of happens on the job, yeah?
I mean, our training is basically, here's a brief overview of how the code that you're going to work with looks. Here's your computer. Let's get started. That's, I mean, we don't really have a lot of internal training. It's not like weeks and weeks of doing tasks that are of no consequence to the project. Like we said before, our aim is to drop people directly into doing meaningful things.
Yeah, the best way is to get the real task, get into the engine, get into the game as soon as possible, and then we have wiki documentation for the engine and the game, and you have your mentor that's always there that you can ask questions. So you're never alone. You never have to feel like, oh my god, what am I doing? I'm gonna break everything. There's always somebody you can ask, and that seems to work really well for us.
It's like the buddy system.
Yeah, but of course, it is. But of course, there will be an introduction to the game, and I would assume that when you get hired, you would be interested in knowing as much as possible about the game beforehand. But of course, we will support you in terms of what is the game about, at which state are we in, and what is the expectations and the outline for the next sprint, etc. So.
Okay, answer the other part of the question as well before we forgot that one, which was if the programmers mostly work as lone wolves or more in a team. I would say most of the programmers work as part of a team. Sometimes there's tasks that's just one person that's working on, and then they're going to be more lone wolfy, but even then they're part of a team. Because you always need somebody else to look at things. It's always nice to do what we call rubber ducking, which is explaining the problem you're working on to somebody else, even if they can't really give you any direct feedback. It's very useful just to talk about it. And then we also do code reviews on every check-in that goes in and so on. So nobody's really a lone wolf. But it depends a bit on what tasks you're doing at the moment.
All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit here, and I don't have the origin for this question, but it says, pardon me, are you more excited about your work knowing that you're delivering a consumer entertainment product?
I don't know what else I would be doing. I wouldn't program something that isn't games. So for me, that's yes.
We should say Tobias used to play in a band, so I think maybe you like the attention.
It's all about front stage.
Yes. No, I definitely think it matters. I think if you enjoy your work a lot more, knowing there's so many people that care about it so deeply, seeing the joy people get out of playing the game you made, that's really, really satisfying. And I think that's hard to find in many other industries. I'm from the telecom industry once upon a time, and even though that also ended up in a end user product, which was a phone, it's not the same as seeing somebody playing your game, seeing people like discuss on forums about how things work in the game, or did you do that? Did you find that guy? I mean, that's an amazing feeling. And I mean, even now we have people like cosplaying the Division and things like that, and it just blows your mind. You're so humbled, and you feel so happy that somebody cares so much about what you do. I mean, it's an amazing feeling.
Anders, you were at E3 2013. How
Yes.
was that?
Nervous. I was standing backstage saying, "Don't crash, don't crash, don't crash." But it was an amazing feeling. Getting to finally show the game, getting to people to see what we've been doing this time. It was a really good feeling, and
it was sort of the external feedback
Yeah.
section really kicking off.
I mean, we have been doing this for a long time, and didn't really know how it would be received and what would happen. So yeah, it was a great feeling. I was very happy and lucky to be there. And it didn't crash, so I was very happy about that as well.
Yeah, we were nervous watching
Yeah.
The Office, so yeah, I can understand you must have been a mess.
Yeah, that was 2 or 3 in the morning here, yeah?
I think so, something like that. Stayed late to watch.
Our next question comes from one of the panelists, Michelle, and she asks, how important is the mobile gaming / companion market for you?
Quite important. More and more people are playing on other devices, such as phones or tablets, and it really seems to be where a big niche of the gaming market will be in the future and the years to come. And I think also that people are getting to the point where they expect to be able to take the entertainment they have in whatever format they have available at the time, and they expect to be able to bring it when they're traveling or on the bus or wherever. So I think it's really important to not be left out from that, and to be a part of people's life as much as they want you to be.
Yeah, and talking about innovation from before, I mean, that's a market where, for us, moving into the mobile market is definitely gonna require us to innovate. How do we bring the type of experiences that we do to that market? And like you said before, the companion application that we have has been received as at least partly innovative and awesome, which is great. And also, I think I mean, for Ubisoft as a whole, mobile and online is definitely important.
Yeah.
Something they're looking into, or we're looking into a lot more. And of course, it's entertainment, and you could be our customer, meaning that we're keen on listening to what you as a customer expects and are interested in, and sort of governs us in our development.
Yeah, and to bring it back a bit to the graduate program, I mean, it brings a lot of new interesting challenges for the online programmers, because you need to have an iPad interact with Xbox Live, for example, to be able to play with people who are playing on Xbox. And those kinds of challenges are really interesting. How do you do voice over IP from an Android to the PlayStation network?
Yeah.
It brings a lot of new but very interesting challenges where people really haven't ever done it before. So that's something that's very likely that you're going to work on if you join the graduate program as a programmer.
Yeah, and that's really cool, I would say, because it's sort of we're in a shift in phase for the market as well. So you would really be part of something that is developing a new area that is becoming more and more important for us to become a big champion within.
Definitely. I mean, this is where the future is going, and I think Microsoft and Sony can see that as well. So they're very interested in getting as much as possible going on with different kinds of companion apps, companion games, and so on.
I'm going to follow that up with a question, because we haven't actually touched on this yet. Is it a different skill set that we're looking for when you're talking about a mobile programmer? Somebody who focuses on that, or is it different languages or tools they should know?
It's a bit of a different tool set. I would say it's not that much of a mindset. The mindset is the same, but some of the tools you use can be different. Some of the deploy pipelines and things like that can be different. We have a very integrated pipeline between our companion gaming and the main game, but it's still like deploying on an iPhone or something like that. It's always going to require a slightly different builds and tool sets.
Okay, so we're just about out of time. I'm going to get one last question from the live stream here, and this question is, what's the biggest lesson I'll learn about programming throughout my time in the graduate program? God, they are giving you guys easy ones all day long today.
Yeah.
Oh, can I do the easy answer?
Sure.
That there's always more to learn.
Yeah. I think that's the easy answer. There's always more to learn. There's always somebody that knows more than you. There's always something you can pick up from the people you work with. I think that's one of the joys I've gotten out of working as a programmer within Ubisoft, that I've never felt that I've reached an end or that I can't learn anymore or that there's nobody to learn from. There's always people who can help you and who knows a lot and are willing to share that information with you.
And things change. That is,
Yeah.
to me, that's one of the aspects of this industry that I really find interesting, because things never stand still. It's always something going on, and technology develops, and you need to be in the forefront of that.
To say a more programming answer, I would say, especially if you join Massive for the graduate program, you're going to learn a lot about how you thread things and how you do threading, because everything we do is threaded to. You don't want to know how many threads. It's the future. I mean, with the new consoles, you have to do it to get the performance you need. And I think it's something that people straight out of school is not always that strong in. So if I have to pick like one programming subject that you're going to learn that's not as abstract, then threading would probably be it.
So I guess if we add a fourth bullet to the requirements, it's maybe humility.
Yeah, I think like we don't really have any egos. Like everybody helps everybody. Everybody's open for criticism. I think that's very important. Having people that have rockstar skills is good, but having people that have rockstar ego is not good. You want people that you can work with. You want people that you can rely on, and that nobody is gonna think they're more important than anybody else, because then you're gonna have a problem and not gonna have a good time. But I think we have a really good culture where people are so helpful. Nobody is really like super protective of what they're doing. That's actually one of the things we get the most from people we hire or recruit, is that they haven't experienced such a open environment between the programmers anyplace else. And I think that's really important, and that's something we're gonna really fight to keep.
So if you like what Anders and Tobias have been saying, don't hesitate to apply. We really look forward to having your application. So don't hesitate. Before the 15th of March, just as a small reminder.
Yeah, come on over, do some threading.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time. I'd like to thank Anders, Tobias, and Åsa for being with us today.
Thank you, Andres.
You got the names right. Yay.
Hey, an old dog can learn new tricks.
Oh.
I'd also like to thank Moses, Rohan, and Michelle for joining us, and everyone who watched and in the live stream. One last time, if you want to learn more about the graduate program, please go to Massive Entertainment's website. You can Google us or Google the Ubisoft graduate program. The admissions end on the 15th.